Mac, I have news. I have amazing news in my
Oh,
life. Maybe the best news that I've received. When was my kid born? 4-ish years ago. Best
yeah.
news since then.
Okay.
A barbershop has opened in my neighborhood.
Oh, well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
If anyone that's been following the podcast for a couple years now, you had a little bit of a run-in with your barber, longtime barber, and I suggested going elsewhere, and you thought that was blasphemous.
I did, but also they charge way too much money now. And the
Yeah.
barbershop that's in my neighborhood, $30 for a haircut.
For a regular degular?
Yeah.
Wow. What's it like 15 bucks for a buzz cut there?
Get this, even better.
What?
A kid's haircut? Are you sitting down?
I have sat down.
$15.
Wow. So they're trying to get the people in there. That's smart. Smart business.
And I have no idea if they're any good. Well, my hair, they did cut my hair. I look amazing. If you're listening on the podcast right now,
Yeah.
I look fantastic
What
right
do you
now.
what do you got on the side? Is that a low taper, a mid taper? What do they call that?
I used to say fade a one up. Let's
Okay.
go hide and tight.
Sure, sure.
But for a kid's haircut to be $15, it could be the worst haircut in the world. I don't care.
Yeah, there's like a novelty to kids having bad haircuts. So it almost doesn't matter, like, until he starts taking school pictures, and even then, they're funny to look at years in the past.
Because my other barber, 4 kids,
Mhm.
$45.
Ooh, come
Yeah.
on. There's not a lot of hair. When they're young, I guess you gotta,
Same amount of hair, but that's
y
fine.
no, smaller heads. Um,
My kid's got a fucking
yeah,
melon for a
Raffy
head.
doesn't have a melon on him. I
Yeah.
guess when they're younger, you gotta keep them distracted and seated, so maybe a bit of an upcharge there, but in Raffy's range now, like, what's a haircut take? 10 minutes, and they're gonna charge you 45 bucks?
Now, here's the problem, though, is that they've been open for a week, my new barber.
Yeah,
I have claimed them. They are my barber.
okay.
They've been open for 1 week, and every time that I have driven by the barbershop, which is
Mhm.
roughly 4 times a day, there's never anyone in there.
Yeah, it's brand new.
I am deathly afraid right now
Uh-huh.
that they're gonna close shop.
No, I think you'll be alright. So, obviously, me
Lay it on me. Economics 101. Hit me.
as a baldman, I don't frequent barbershops that often, but every once in a while I get lazy and I like the hot shave treatment, so I'll go. So there's a place I go down the block from the firehouse I work at. And when they first started, it was 3 barbers in that shop, smaller shop, and it wasn't that packed. Now, 2, 3 years later, you almost can't even walk in. You have to make an appointment because they're so busy.
I just need them to survive. I can't go back. Being able to walk to my barbershop,
Mhm.
and the hours are great. Being able to walk to my barbershop is fucking liberating.
How early do they open?
9:00.
Okay, so that seems to be like the regular these days. There is a barber shop in the lake in Newton that opens at 7, I believe. So you can get a pre-work haircut. That's a real old school one, but
Yeah, but they
you don't s
also close at 8, so it's a
oh,
real long
that's
day.
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love a neighborhood barbershop. I really do. You almost feel like you've gone back 30 years when you enter a barbershop. Even when it's got new technology, just like the aura and the vibe in there is like a throwback.
One goo, 3, yeah! Goo! Jaws 3! Goo! King of Queens! Goo! Meryl Streep! Entertainment!
I'm Goo.
And I'm Mick.
And this is the Mac and Goo program. We bring you wet friendship.
We're getting real moist today, boys and girls.
We are.
Today we are talking about one of my favorite movies of my childhood, Waterworld. Waterworld. I still, no spoiler here, peek behind the curtain for what's to come. I still enjoy this movie. I don't to what degree we can talk about, but I still enjoy this movie.
I don't know what I think.
If you have yet to watch this movie, it is streaming for free on the cock. If you have a
Water
Peacock,
streams down a river.
if you have a Peacock subscription, you can watch this for free. Otherwise, I don't know how to watch it, but it's free on there. Goo.
Yes.
Waterworld is an R-rated action, adventure, and sci-fi And I'll tell you, there's some more stuff here on IMDb. For some reason, the IMDb app lists every possible like tag on it, whereas the website will just give like the top 3 generally. This is also listed, Goo, as an adventure epic, dystopian sci-fi, a quest, a nice quest, a sea adventure. I like that. That's my new
That's
favorite
not
genre.
a genre.
That's a
That's
new
not a
genre. Yep.
genre.
It's this in the Pirates movies, sea adventures. And then also steampunk, which I suppose works as well.
Yes. Okay. But I bet that if you ask Kevin Costner, and then who's the director?
Kevin Reynolds.
I bet if you asked them what the genre was, they would say, fuck you.
Sea adventure.
No, they would just say, mind your own business. Watch the movie and shut up.
Goo, this movie has a runtime of 135 minutes, 2 hours and 15 minutes. And in that respect, it's about 30 minutes too long.
I was going to ask you, which version did you watch? Because there are technically 3 versions. There was the one that aired on television on ABC that was actually too long to air in one night, so they cut it in half and did it as a 2-night adventure, if you will. They cut out some of the adult content, but they added in 17 minutes of dialogue.
Wow. Okay. So there are a couple like low moments in this movie where it does get a little boring. But the swashbuckling fun is great. And I wish there was almost more of that. You get a decent amount of it. But I would say if you got this to just under 2 hours, like an hour 50, hour 55, it would have been much better.
Did you watch the mix of the television and theatrical version, which is called the Ulysses cut?
I watched whatever Peacock offered to me, so I don't know.
Roughly 3 hours long. The Ulysses cut is 3 hours long.
I like that, Ulysses. Yeah. Okay. All right. I did not watch that.
I believe you saw the theater version.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. That's probably the version I saw. Goo.
Yes.
Speaking of theaters, this hit theaters July 28th, 1995. You and I were 6 years old. Actually, this supplanted Apollo 13 in the theaters that weekend. It was number 1 at the box office for like a month straight. I actually watched Apollo 13 in the theaters. One of the early movies I remember seeing in the theaters. This made off of an initial budget of 100 million, which then ballooned to 172 by the end of shooting.
Yes.
And then if you include marketing, we get up to $235 million to make and market this movie. It only made $88 million at the US box office.
Yes.
That obviously is an incredible flop. It did make its money back worldwide, though. It cumulative worldwide up to 264. But again, theaters and studios split profits, so they probably lost it.
And then it is profitable too off of its cable television airings too.
Yeah, it was on cable TV for a good 15, 20
also,
years.
Just sorry and we're going to jump on each other this entire podcast. But the original budget for this movie was supposed to be $20 million.
100, I believe.
No, the original budget was $20 million, and then
I don't know how they thought they were going to make a movie set in the ocean for $20 million.
So it then jumped to 65, but then Kevin Costner wanted to add some more realism, and that's when it jumped to 100. Then around day 96, it ballooned to 157.
Someone was keeping a journal.
135, it ballooned to the 175.
Okay, all right, there you go. There's a nice fun fact for you.
Yeah.
Goo, let me see if you can guess the other films that were at the box office that weekend, other than this and Apollo 13. What round out the top 5?
1995. What is the release date?
July 28th.
July 28th. I know Toy Story wasn't until November, so that wouldn't be the case. Lion King was 94. Was Pocahontas in the theaters?
No. So the other 3, first was this. Second was a movie called The Net, starring Sandra Bullock, which was I think an internet spy thriller. I've never seen it. That fell off pretty quickly. That didn't do well. Third was Apollo 13. Fourth was Clueless.
Oh,
Clueless the movie.
Godspeed Alicia Silverstone, by the way.
Another one.
She ate some poison berries.
Another one that I like probably more than most. And then rounding out the top 5 was the Hugh Grant rom-com, 9 Months. Hugh Grant and Julianne Moore.
Let me ask you this. So the other day at work, of course, when Alicia Silverstone did eat the poison berries, there were some coworkers, some younger coworkers, who didn't know who she was. And then I explained that mid to late 90s, one of the biggest movie stars in the world. And then an older coworker said, that doesn't sound true. Where do you fall on this? I didn't say greatest actors. I said movie star.
She was in 2 gigantic movies,
Yes.
and she had the Clueless television show, and she
She
had the
wasn't
a
in that, but go ahead.
she wasn't in that?
No.
Who played Cher in the television show?
How would I know that off the top of my
I'm
head?
pretty sure she was in the television
She
show
was
too.
not, but go ahead.
Fuck yourself. Um, she also was in that Aerosmith video, which
Yeah.
obviously everyone references all the time. So she was pretty popular, but I wouldn't say she was A-list. She was probably B-list.
Okay, fine. So you're siding more with my older coworker.
Yeah, I wouldn't call her a megastar, but I you know what she was missing? She was missing that legitimizing role. So obviously Clueless made her a star, but
Blast
then
from the past.
Batman and Robin kind of took her back down. If
Yes, it
that
did.
was a success, I think she would have vaulted to A, but obviously that didn't work.
Blast from the past.
Goo! On
Yes.
Roddy T's, this movie has 47% from the critics, 43% from the audience, and honestly, that's not as bad as it's made out to be. When you hear people talk about Waterworld, you would think that critics gave it 10%, audience gave it 20.
No, I think it's just comparing it to how much it costs to make.
That's yeah.
That's
I
what
I
it's
it's
saying.
it's for sure all relative because this Goo, I don't think this movie's bad.
No,
Like
no, but also
even removing some bias, I don't think it's a bad movie.
I think at that 50%, I get it. That's
Yeah.
kind of that's
Yeah,
pretty much, yeah.
I understand that. And on Metacritic, it's a 56. So critics didn't hate this movie. It just obviously was disappointing for what it may have promised or what it was potentially going to be. This movie is written by Peter Rader, who you would never know before, you didn't know afterwards, as well as David Twohy.
Mhm.
David Twohy wrote The Fugitive, G.I. Jane, Pitch Black, The Chronicles of Riddick, and Riddick. So obviously carried that franchise.
When it comes to writing this movie, the original script was written in 1986 and was inspired, I put that in quotes, by Mad Max. It was then finished in 1989, and on the set, they had Joss Whedon doing rewrites.
Oh, I like that. Look at you. You really did do your research today.
I told you ahead of time, for a single movie review, this is the most research I have done in a very, very long time.
And it is clear how much of Mad Max is an inspiration into this, and that's why
How
it
much
probably
they
was
ripped
written
off from Mad
in
Max?
'86. But at the same time, you know it's more fun than sand and dust?
Yes.
Water and waves, Goo. Water and
Oh, that's
waves.
a poll right there. What do you prefer, sand and dust or water and waves?
David
Because
Twohy, by
I
the
think
way.
if you ask the characters in this movie, they would say sand and dust because that is their currency.
Ooh, look at you. Look
Yeah.
at you.
I
You're really
paid
diving
attention
into the
during the movie as
Waterworld
well.
lore.
I paid attention during the movie.
David too, he's still working. He's got 4 upcoming projects. So if you liked Waterworld, look out for those. This movie is directed by the aforementioned Kevin Reynolds. He actually directed Costner twice before this,
Yes.
in Fandango and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, not Men of Toast.
Yes. And because of those movies, he was handpicked by Costner. Do you know who Universal wanted for this movie?
I don't. Lay it on me.
Robert Zemeckis.
Oh,
And you know who said no?
Robert Zemeckis.
Kevin Costner. He said, I'm not working with that guy.
Really?
Yep.
This would be coming off the heels of Forrest Gump too.
Or, yeah, right off the heels of Forrest Gump when he's at his
Wow.
hottest.
That's wild. Although Costner, notoriously a massive fucking dickhead. And speaking of that, Kevin Reynolds actually left this movie before it was finished. It was all shot, but they were editing and producing it, and Kevin Reynolds left the movie
Yes, that's
because him and
because,
Kevin Costner had such a large disagreement.
well, that's also because they ran out of budget. They ran out of money. I can explain more of that in a second. So Costner would have walked off this project if Reynolds was not the director.
Okay,
To
so
start.
you have to imagine what took place for them for it to cause such a rift between the two.
Mac, do you know what critics called this movie when it was being released?
Swashbuckling fun.
No, pundits called it fish tar and Kevin's Gate.
Okay, all right, interesting.
Those
Goo.
are parodies off of other movies that had production issues.
A nice end to the Costner Reynolds story, though. He came back in 2012 and directed Costner in the 2012 miniseries Hatfields and McCoys. So they're friends again. So that's nice. Friendship. We always like to see friendship.
Okay, so once again, this movie was the most expensive movie of all time at the time of its release at roughly $175. Mac, I'm going to list you some other popular movies, other popular big budget blockbusters at that time.
Mhm.
Can you guess the can you guess the production budget of these movies?
Okay.
Twister.
Twister, I bet, was expensive. A lot of CGI in that. I'm gonna say Twister was like 120 million.
92.
Okay. All right.
How about T2, Terminator 2? That was
T2.
1992.
Yeah, the Robert Patrick effects were probably expensive, but it was a few years prior, so it's gonna be cheaper. I'm gonna say 80 million.
100 million.
Oh, all right. More expensive than
Independence Day.
Twister. Independence Day had to have been expensive. I'll go to 120.
75 million.
Wow, that's impressive. That's
Men
impressive.
in Black.
Here come the men in black.
They paid all their money just for that song. Just
Let's
for that
go 104 on Men in Black.
90 million.
Oh, wow.
And then finally, the cost of Jurassic Park.
If Terminator was let's go 97 million.
$63 million.
Wow. So basically, this was 3 times more expensive than Jurassic Park and double as expensive as everything else.
And don't get me wrong, some of this movie looks incredible.
The whole thing surrounding that floating sea city is awesome.
Yeah, but also with the floating sea city, with all of their boats being on open water. Speaking of Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg, who had some experience working on water, told Universal, told the director, told everyone, don't work on open water. They didn't listen to him, and hurricane season came and took out some of their equipment.
Yeah, so obviously, I don't know. They've been building sound stages for 100 years. I don't know if the technology was good enough to build a massive water stage with a big blue or green
I
screen
can get to
background.
that in a second.
Okay, because
Okay,
that
so
obviously would have cut down on a ton of cost.
Yep, so Spielberg said, you're just going to need a couple shots on the water. Use the second unit for that. Do all of your coverage in a tank or on a stage.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense.
And then, of course, hurricane season came, and they built a 1,000-ton floating island off the coast of Hawaii that was a 1/4 mile wide and used all of the steel in Hawaii. Now, because there was only so many people there to work, local contractors took full advantage of being the only game in town and upped all their prices.
Yeah, you might as well. Absolutely.
Several people got hurt during the shooting of this movie. Kevin Costner's stunt double almost died of embolism.
Oh, wow.
And Tina Majorino,
That's the little girl.
the little girl, she was stung by jellyfish repeatedly. That's not funny, Mac.
How, how often was she in the water? She kept getting stung.
Well, she was tossed in the water by Costner in that scene when she couldn't swim. By the way, she should have drowned in that scene, right? She can't swim. She's tossed into open water.
She's all right. You'll be all right for a few seconds anyways. Goo!
Yes.
Synopsis of Waterworld. In a future where the polar ice caps have melted and Earth is almost entirely submerged, a mutated mariner fights starvation and outlaw smokers and reluctantly helps a woman and a young girl try to find dry land.
The smokers are so oversold, even in that minor synopsis. The smokers suck.
But they only suck against competent people. They dominated that city.
How many people are actually here? Also, I'm going to toss this out here. Costner, not a people. Costner is a frog in this movie.
He's a mutant.
He's an amphibian.
That's part of the reason why I love the movie. He's a superhero.
I also cannot stand the fact that everyone keeps on referring to him as being like a fish boy or a fish man. He's an amphibian. He's a frog. He's able to both breathe oxygen and water. That makes him a frog or a toad.
Well, get a little spoiler alert here for how gills work. They're actually getting oxygen out of the water. You're not breathing water.
Right, but that's what frogs do.
Frogs breathe water?
Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Bro, learn about frogs and
I don't
tadpoles.
think that's true. I do like that Dennis Hopper calls him Guppy in this. That's a nice little fish reference.
You should have called him a tadpole.
This movie stars Kevin Costner as the Mariner. No name, never given a name.
He is what a boring lead character.
He is pretty one note, that's for sure.
Also,
And
you know
I hate Kevin Costner and still like this movie.
Did you know that Kevin Costner stayed in an $1,800 a day oceanfront villa with a pool and butler while shooting this movie? This was all happening during a divorce with his wife where he lost an $80 million settlement, and his trainer was arrested for having illegal steroids during the shooting of this movie.
Also stars Dennis Hopper as Deacon. Dennis Hopper is always a great villain. He's great in this movie, Gil.
Let me say this. I think he might be having the most fun that anyone has ever had on a movie during this movie.
He has a blast.
My issue with it is that he is so non-threatening as the bad guy that
That's
it
what I like
really
about him.
takes you out of it.
No, because you can tell that he's like just somehow almost happenstance ended up in power, but he himself isn't very intimidating. He's got his bulk and skull to his left and right, the big blonde guy who's a decent little
But
like
he's bulk and skull mixed into one anyways. You can't have 20 bulk and skulls.
You have Jeanne Tripplehorn here as Helen, who I think I spent maybe, I don't know, the first 5 years after watching this movie thinking that she was Enola's mother. Enola played by Tina Majorino,
No.
and not. She just sort of takes care of her because they ended up at that floating city. And another note here, one last casting note. You don't really need to know anyone else besides the tall blonde guy. Jack Black plays one of the smokers in this movie.
Was he in the movie or was he cut out of the movie?
No, he's in the movie.
He's in it. His line was cut out of the movie, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know about that, but he's definitely in the movie.
Back to the leading lady there. Wasn't it odd that when Enola was kidnapped, their initial reaction was to bang? Like they had sex almost immediately after.
First of all, spoiler alert.
Sorry. Oh, this is all spoilers. The movie came out fucking 100 years ago. But I mean, you kind of understand. You're like, oh, we finally have a second to ourselves.
I have a note.
But
I have a note here, Goo. Her daughter, for lack of a better term, is gone, and they're gonna die. So they said, "Time to fuck."
Yeah. Also, did I miss it? Did she have like a line in the movie of like, "Hey, I know that you have gills and you're a mutant. What are you working with downstairs?"
No, I don't think that was uttered.
Someone should have asked because that is a question that you should ask.
For those of you,
so I'm sorry to jump once again, but
yeah.
Why is he the only mutant in the movie? Also, did you do the research of how many years has it been since the ice caps have melted?
So that's I don't know if it's ever been said, but so a couple things here, and this is for the folks at home that maybe haven't watched the movie and are trying to better understand Waterworld.
Yeah.
Essentially, if the synopsis wasn't good enough, essentially, this is a world where water covers 99% of the planet. Everyone has heard about this mythical dry land, but no one knows where it is. No one's really seen it except for, a few here and there. There's no real way to find it. There's no technology. You just have hand maps that are probably 1,000 years
or
old.
tattooed maps.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin Costner's character has a mutation where he has gills behind his ears, which leads you to believe they've got to be like at least 1,000 years into this water world for a mutation to happen, right?
Yes.
So there's no set time frame, but I'm guessing at least 1,000 years, if not a couple thousand.
He also has webbed toes, like a fucking frog.
Right. Come on with the frog. He doesn't have a long tongue.
Frog.
No, he doesn't have a long tongue. I wouldn't call him a frog.
I also wouldn't have mind. So he had the sex scene with the lady, but also like a sex scene with a frog. Like he finds both attractive because he's both.
The villains in this movie are the aforementioned smokers, led by Dennis Hopper, who will do anything to find this mythical dry land, and they basically raid all these floating cities and boats. And they just come to discover that this little girl, Enola, has this tattooed map on her back, and that she becomes the focus of everyone's interest in this movie. On Costner's character, the Mariner, he basically hates everyone. He fends for himself, floats in the sea for days and days, occasionally comes past other drifters. And the only real change he makes in this is you don't really see it visually, but he just starts caring for the little girl. And part of it maybe is because Helen fucked him. I don't know. I have no idea.
It's too much like it's the hardened leading male character, much like Alan Grant, say, in Jurassic Park, who just does not give a shit about these kids. But then by the end, his heart grows 3 sizes too big, and he realizes the wrong of his ways.
It's a tale as old as time.
Beauty and the Beast.
A woman and a kid humanizing this fucking overly masculine male.
But
And
Jesus, man, he is so abusive. I get it's been 1,000 years, but did your manners melt with the ice caps?
well, he's fucking floating. He's gonna the fucking opening of the movie. The man steals his goddamn limes. He's gonna fend for himself every day.
He is physically abusive. He is emotionally abusive. He cuts their hair with a knife, which is like, look, I appreciate a cheap haircut, but that's too much.
I don't know if you didn't get the setting appropriate at the beginning, but he's got to pee into a cup to drink his morning water.
The first 10 minutes of this movie is fucking breakneck speed of like, this is what this movie is.
Yeah.
Strap in because you have 2 more hours of it. The issue is that the next 2 hours slows down at points way too much.
There's a couple times. I wouldn't say way too much. There's definitely enough action in there. I do like how it's like Mad Max inspired, but you have like an Indiana Jones-esque soundtrack to the movie and like soundscape to the movie.
I hate the soundtrack to this movie.
Oh, I
I
love
hate
it.
the score to this movie. It is
Love it.
all over the place. It is ripping off John Williams. It is ripping off what's his name who does like the Burton movies. Why am I blanking on his name?
I'm
But
never
it
gonna pull this.
like it has like that big like Burton orchestral type of sound to it too.
Sounds like Indiana Jones.
But it also like has like a Far East sound to it at points. It has
Well,
it has
when
an indigenous people sound to it at points. It doesn't know what it wants to be.
no, it invokes all the right emotions at certain points of the
I
movie.
didn't know how to feel at any point of this movie. And then you have that like soft soundtrack in the background,
Mhm.
and everyone in this movie, much like everyone in this podcast, just yells all of their lines.
Do you want to get to the gauntlet?
In a second, I think my favorite rumor about this movie that had to do with a lot of spending is that Kevin Costner demanded that the special effects development team add computer-generated hair to his balding head.
He couldn't just wear extensions? I don't even understand that.
Which is something that Mac asked me to do before every one of these podcasts.
How do you even see like the back of his head often in this movie? I don't even understand that.
He has like thin, stringy hair, but then he has the definitely thinner front hair.
He is an all-time dickhead. Is there anyone in Hollywood that likes him?
I don't know. I don't know. What are we talking about right now? I'm
Yeah.
so lost.
Get to the
I
gauntlet.
fell asleep multiple times watching this movie. This took me 3 times to sit through.
It's a real warrior effort out of you.
Thank you. Much like the Mariner.
Yes.
All right, let's get to the nonagon, I guess. Fun factor, Mac. And I do think that this is a pretty fun movie. It doesn't waste any time at the beginning. The polar ice caps have melted. The world is water. Costner drinks his own pee, and then he does a cool somersault. The action and the stunts in this movie, although by the end kind of feel a little samey and it feels like a park attraction,
Mhm.
they're really cool. They're really fun. They look cool. I actually did, after watching the movie, I watched the 20-minute stage show too.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, which is
I bet it's
pretty
fucking
fun.
awesome.
Yeah, and Dennis Hopper is just fun.
Dennis Hopper's great.
Yeah.
Oh, my turn.
Yes, do you want to talk in this podcast?
I think this movie, especially framing it through maybe my 8-year-old mind, I was probably 8 the first time I saw this. Just like a world of water inherently is fun to me, as opposed to a world of sand and dirt and that sort of shit, the Mad Max level. The action is super fun. Jet skis jumping over shit, going under stuff.
Yeah.
You know, somehow a plane's involved. They don't ever really explain.
Oh, a plan's involved.
There's no where do they get the gasoline? Don't overthink it. Whatever. They just maybe use water in the end. I don't know.
Future. It's the future.
I have no idea. It's all the boat stuff I like him sliding up and down with the sails, the way the sail
Yeah.
pops out. It just is like they definitely tried their best to use as much practical effects as they can. And I think that shows and helps a lot of this movie. It just like it is definitely missing like a big action set piece towards the end. You have the big moment towards the end of the first act with the floating city, and then when he sneaks onto the boat towards the end, like it's decent, but it's
Wait,
not
do
like
you like that? Do you like the killer Batman fucking scene
it's
where the girl is like
that's like
narrating everything?
if they had had a second tentpole action scene right there in the third act, I think this movie would be way better because you're always thinking back to that first like assault on the city where they escape, and that's the best part of the movie.
All right. Borometer. We'll jump to this one really quick because I mentioned that Dennis Hopper is very, very fun. I think the smokers and Hopper as an actual villain is kind of boring, and I think that kind of gives it a little flimsy feel to it.
Fair enough. I don't agree. I think he's awesome. The Boar Armor definitely ticks here when you're like having the adults talk to the little girl. Like that you're like, all right, I get it. She's like trying to be wisecracking. But I also feel like, when you're out in the open ocean, there's a lot of downtime. So I feel like they tried to show that a little bit, that
Mhm.
you fucking left to your own devices. And that isn't inherently boring, but it's accurate.
And then also, like, if you compare Costner to like the other stoic masculine heroes that we've gotten in the past, he's definitely close to the bottom of the list.
Yeah, I think a better lead and a second tentpole action scene would have made this movie maybe not great, but it would have maybe been in like the 60s or 70s on Roddy T's instead of the 40s because it's not that far off from being a pretty good movie.
Satisfactor, Mac, they reveal roughly 20 minutes into the movie that Costner's a mermaid. Merman.
Merman.
Um, and he's able to live under the sea if he so chooses. So first off, where are the other mutants? Because the land that buys the dirt off him, they know of other mutants, so they've encountered other mutants. You're kind of waiting for more. You're waiting for more mutants as this movie goes on. You never get any, and then I think what they should have done, and this is completely we're 30 years removed from this movie, is maybe reveal that he has gills like an hour into the movie, 2 hours into the movie, and that's how he is able to then save people. Because you throw this out there so early, are they just trying to like adjust people, be like, hey, by the way, he has gills?
First of all, I think it's pretty clear where all the other guild people are. The minute they found out, the regular people found out he had gills, they tried to kill him. So all those people have been
They tried to
killed
kill him by drowning him. Do they know
in
how
mud.
gills work?
In like mud, though. That works.
No,
If you
but
put
the
a fish
first
in mud, they
the
die.
first thing the guy did was try to have a knife fight with him in the fucking water. He has gills.
Yeah.
How do you expect to win that fight?
You're gonna lose that every time, 10
Yes.
times out of 10.
Yes.
I could beat a wolf, I couldn't beat the mariner, tell you that. I think that there's something, and maybe this differs between you and I. Him having gills and near like superhuman abilities make that fun and satisfying. Like you're almost watching a pseudo
He
like
is supposed to
anti-villain
be an
movie.
everyman, not a monster.
No, he's not supposed to be an everyman. That's why he's a great fighter as well.
I would have preferred him being a regular person.
No, I like that
If
he's
he had a
basically
couple
Aquaman.
regular people emotions, that
You
would
know
have
what
helped
he's
too.
missing actually is being able to summon fish. That would have made this better.
So you just would have wanted Aquaman.
Yeah, this is a better version of Aquaman.
Well, let's get to the Aquator then. Aquaman's better.
No, this is better.
No.
This is far more
Aquaman has a
enjoyable.
charismatic lead character.
No, this is better.
This has a better villain.
There's
This
a better
one
story,
shows
too.
butts. This one shows a butt.
You get nudity, a better story, and a better villain. I'll
Brief
give
nudity.
you
A
Momoa.
butt is brief nudity. Breasts is nudity.
Which is like if you're gonna have an R-rated movie, like you might
It's
as well
rated
show.
PG-13, by the way.
Oh, I thought it was PG. I
I
thought it was R.
looked it up. I saw
Okay.
PG-13. I could be wrong. I saw
No, you might be right.
PG-13.
I put a PG. I put R-rated, just assuming it was. You're right though. There's not really any swears, and there's no real blood either. So yeah, you're right. It probably is PG-13. It would have been better as an R.
Yeah, I think this movie sinks like the little girl who should have sunk to the bottom of the ocean when she was thrown into the water by the mariner.
No, this movie is a fun summer blockbuster that should have and could have been better, but in my mind, it's still rather enjoyable 30 years later.
I think there are parts of this movie that are rather enjoyable, but there are
Sure.
other parts that, like, I was just exhausted watching this
What
movie.
part of Aquaman is rather enjoyable?
The submarine scene. Permission to come aboard. Redheads. Am I
This
right?
has more enjoyable scenes and action than Aquaman does.
I disagree. Halloween.
They're similar though.
No, I was going to say, I might have the same score, so let's just not.
All right.
Halloween has our interest in this movie waned over time, and I think I have more appreciation for the movie because it does look really, really good at points, and the action is really cool at points. A lot of stuff doesn't look like this anymore. And also, just everything that has to do with the budget and the background and the turmoil of this movie, it's very intriguing.
Yeah, it's a movie that I've watched. If you had to list like the top 20 movies you've seen most in your life, this is pretty close for me. I've seen this movie so many times, so it's hard for me to say it's waned over time. Um, and also like the whole we've talked about it a couple times before. Part of the reason we're doing this is me telling the story about how I found out Waterworld wasn't well received. You know, in '97, probably when I started watching it on cable television when I was 8 years old, it became a movie I enjoyed very much. But when you're 8 years old, you don't really talk to other people about movies. It's just not a conversation you have. And then when I got to college, when I was 18 years old, 10 years later, 2007, one of my friends, future roommates, I don't remember how it came up, but he was the first person to let me know that Waterworld was not well received. And then, of course, I do a Googs, find all that stuff. I don't even know if Rotten Tomatoes existed in 2007. It might have been right around there. So there was no, it was really hard to tell how things were received other than the box office, right? You just saw how much things were made, but I wasn't into Metacritic. I wasn't into Roddy T's. I don't think Cinema Score was a thing. Like today, it's so apparent before the movie even hits theaters how people are going to react to movies, where in 1995 that wasn't a thing. You needed to see how it performed at the box office.
Oh, let me ask you this, because you were a huge fan of this movie. You were 6 at the time, and then you watched it up through however old you were. Merch-wise, did you buy any of the toy line?
No, I don't think I had any of the toys, thinking back to it. I don't remember it anyways. I probably did, but I don't remember playing with the Mariner or any of the sets in here.
Well, the toys were actually repainted Robin Hood Prince of Thieves molds.
Makes sense. Both Costner.
Did you have the SNES game?
No, I did not.
That
I
makes
didn't have
sense.
the
I think it
SNES.
was only released in Europe.
I did not have the SNES, so that would
Did you
be
have the
interesting.
PC game?
No, I did not.
Did you have the Virtual Boy game?
No, I didn't have a Virtual Boy.
Did you know that the Virtual Boy game was voted the worst game on the system? And that is for a system that is the worst of all time.
Was it a side scroller?
No, it was like a 3D print where you're inside of the Waterworld, but it's only red. That's all they could do with
Yeah.
Virtual Boy. Did you have any of the comics that came out 2 years after the movie?
No. What they tried to save the movie with a future comic line?
They said some people like this movie. Let's try
Very
and do
Star
some more.
Wars-esque. And you know, actually what's funny, and the title slide at the opening of the movie gives you some Avatar vibes as well. There's a little bit of that
Well, the
going on here.
music, the indigenous people music, I would
Yeah,
say, is
yeah.
like has a very similar Avatar feel.
So James Cameron ripped off Waterworld.
Was it South Park? Did South Park say that the first Avatar was Smurfs with Waterworld?
That's pretty accurate.
Okay. Plemons. When life gives you plemons, you make plemonade. And the only singular character that I was like, okay, this guy's enjoying himself, that would be Dennis Hopper.
Yeah, it's clearly Dennis Hopper. Every scene Dennis Hopper in is a treat. He's really having his fun here. I just think, you know, we talked about it a little bit in the past when we did best villains, right? And we talked about Dennis Hopper in the 90s.
Yeah.
He is one of the greatest villain actors we've ever seen. He's really good at being a son of a bitch. You know, you had this, you had Speed. What was the other one in the 90s that he was in as well?
Mario.
He's just great at being a son of a bitch. But I liked, especially in this, like in Speed, he's truly terrifying.
Yeah,
in
he's
this,
Speed.
in this, you're like, oh, he's kind of a weasel. He's one of those weasel type bad guys, which I liked.
Like when we did our 1990s best villains of the decade, this character was not on there.
Yeah, I think I honorably mentioned him. I believe.
Okay. Max Credit Union. I think the credit should go to Steven Spielberg for knowing this was going to cost too much money.
I credit Universal, who I believe was a studio, for having the ambition.
Kevin Costner, we know that you want to make this movie. Take more of our money.
I credit them for having the ambition to try to take on this project. I think 10 years later, it would have been a lot easier to make this movie. And I think that's why the script waited for 9 years in the first place, because technology wasn't going to be possible to make this movie. However, though, it is so perfect that it came out in the middle of the 90s. This is such a 90s movie.
Yes, I think that if we ever did, and we should do something like this, like most like specific to a decade, like
Yeah.
movies that are very specific to a decade, this would be in there, and this would
Yeah.
be like top 10.
Like this just reeks of mid 90s and it perfectly fits in 95.
Like Breakfast Club reeks 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
This reeks 90s.
Yes, 100%.
Pants Tent City. Excite Bike Mania. What got you going in this movie?
So I think it's easily that siege of the smokers on that floating city and the escape and the fighting and that like 20-minute scene is fucking great. It's
Mhm.
awesome. And they essentially built that attraction in Universal Studios based off of that one scene. So clearly most people felt that way.
For those of you tardy to the Mac and Goo party, we rate everything on a 40 hot dog rating scale. And Mac, I think for the most part, this movie looks incredible. And, you know, there are some points, it's the green screen, or maybe there's some CGI that's kind of meh. Like Hopper on the rope at the end, that doesn't look great. Or the bungee cord saved by
A-
Costner.
Anytime they
Yeah.
get airborne or floating it with the floaty guy, it looks wonky.
The stunts are pretty dope in this, but for as much fun as I had watching this movie sporadically, this movie was so exhausting. Like, even after a fun, stunt-filled scene, I had to turn it off for a little while. I couldn't keep going. I needed a little break. Costner's Mariner is just boring and paper thin. It's another leading male character that doesn't want to deal with the child. He's a hardened dude, but then, you know, by the end, his heart, he has to save them. And we get that. I didn't necessarily love that killer Batman scene at the end. I keep on calling it that. It's him going through the compound, killing people one by one, trying to get the girl back.
Although the first kill when he rides the jet ski into the guy up the ramp is fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But I don't know. This is such this is such a weird watch because I like what they were going for. I like a lot, not a lot. I like some of what's in this movie. Some of it is wildly boring. I don't really love, besides some of Hopper, any of the characters. 22 hot dogs.
That's a fair assessment, and obviously with the Ruddy T scores, I think people feel similar to you more so than me. I'm not way higher than you. Well, we'll see. Um,
Oh, wait. It turns out I have the same score as
to
you.
me, this is missing. You change the leading man. You have a second great action scene in the third act, and you're like right in that 32, 33 dog range. But because Costner stinks and they are missing that second, like, because the high of the movie comes what 40 minutes in, and then you have a whole like hour and a half left where it never gets back to that. So
Yeah,
that
'cause
is disappointing.
even their first action scene of the smokers attacking that compound, for the most part, you're saying this is nonsense.
Yeah, but
Everyone is just yelling at each other.
I mean, that's like what Mad Max is really, and the Mad Max movies are, is a lot of that nonsense. They just never got back to that. They had it here and there, more isolated stuff, but another big set piece like that would have been great. Might have cost them another $50 million, so maybe that's why they didn't do it. But it's definitely missing that. And I think, you know, because it's missing that second set and because Costner fucking stinks, I have this at like 27 hot dogs. It is, again, so close to being, I think, baseline good. It's probably not a good movie, but because I've seen it so many times and I have those early feelings, I would call it good. 27's right on that line, but like a lot of movies I give 27 are disappointing or boring, and this has some of that. It's just what brings it up to 27, probably from 24, which I have the equator at, is the swashbuckling fun, is the set
It is
pieces.
swashbuckling. I haven't said the word swashbuckling enough in this podcast. It is swashbuckling.
It's just the idea of it. And again, I like the little mini superhero power stuff. Like I like that shit. So I have fond memories of this. That's probably elevating it 2, 3, 4, 5 dogs. And that's why I'm at 27.
So you mentioned the idea of it. I think this movie is ripe for a remake or
Oh.
a sequel,
Well,
a legacy sequel.
speaking of movies that have done well that are not too far away from them, the 2 Mad Max movies that have come out in the last 4 or 5 years have done obviously very well. And then Avatar, twice now, has blown people's dicks off. And this is in the same vein. It hasn't been of the same quality, but it's in the same vein. You could make another movie set in Waterworld, and it could work.
Are you ready for this? And I know that everyone always gives every animated character to Chris Pratt or, but fan casting, I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Give this project to Glenn Powell and let's just
Oh,
move on.
now you're talking. Now
Now
you're
I'm
talking.
cooking.
That's his new thing. He's gonna be making requels to 90s movies that are probably better remembered than they actually were.
And you can't give it to Hemsworth here because
Hemsworth would be great.
Dementis is almost a better version of what Hopper is in this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
But someone along those lines of someone that's big and just looking to have some fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll tell you, the Hemsworth's character in Furiosa, you could have put right into this movie and it would have worked.
Okay, and then I'm not going to fan cast everybody. Can you give me a lady that you would like
For
as
for
the
Tripplehorn to see nude,
Yeah.
Dua Lipa.
Okay.
There you
So
go.
there is our Waterworld
Because
reboot.
you claim she can't act. She's been in 2 successful movies, but she doesn't really need to act in this role. She just exists.
Okay, so we want Glenn Powell as the new Mariner.
Yep.
We want Dua Lipa
And Dua Lipa has that tan skin, so you're like, all right,
or Keister.
that'll work.
We want we want Chris Hemsworth to play Dementis in this movie,
Same character. Yep.
and then we want the kid to be CGI.
No, we need
Don't even
we
get
need
a
like
real kid. Don't even
we
get a
need
real
like
kid.
an up and coming kid.
No,
I
even
don't
get a
know.
real kid. Just
I'm not
fucking
read up
CGI
on my
the
kid
in there.
actors.
CGI the kid. That's how you solve the acting problem.
That's Glenn Powell, Dua Lipa, Chris Hemsworth. That's success right there.
No, but it's Chris Hemsworth as Dementis.
100%. It works.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have any more notes on this movie?
No, I just have a little bit of a timeline if you want to run through it.
I don't want to do that at all.
Good
Actually.
enough. I just love that to your point, the first 10 minutes really sets it off. Like you have him peeing to create his own water. You have the lime tree, which gets stolen by the other guy who eventually gets murked. And then you have an incredible line that I almost wish he broke the fourth wall. He goes, "Nothing's free in Waterworld." Best
Love
line of
that.
the movie.
Yeah, like I said, it's breakneck speed until it's not.
Oh, actually, so two major gripes I had
Okay.
here.
All right. All right.
They never explain
Break out
how
the golf gloves.
all these gas powered vehicles still operates thousands of years in the future. And the second thing, when Costner gets to that floating city, the guy gives him 2 hours. How can you tell any time in this world? What? How would they tell when 2 hours is up?
Sundial.
I also liked the spam towards the end as Smeat instead of spam.
Yes,
Let's get into
Hey, Max, that could be anything. It could be a boat. And Mac, we are but 1 week away from the greatest time of the year, Pumpy season.
Q, in my mind, Pumpy season has already begun. It's not out on the apps yet, I don't believe. I didn't check the Starbucks app. It's not on the Dunks app yet. But most of these stores you can go to, order it inside and get your Pumpy cold brew or whatever drink you want to drink. I have been purchasing cold brew pumpkin stuff in the store for a couple weeks now. So I've already had.
Right? You've been drinking Stoke?
Yeah, Stoke. Really, really quality stuff. Not too creamy or milky. I don't like really any dairy in my coffee. I almost raw dog it, but I get a little of the pumpkin flavor, obviously. But I am well immersed already into Pumpy season. I am looking forward to more pumpkin flavored things. I had a couple pumpkin flavored munchkins the other day.
As a coffee drinker, I drink a large cold brew.
Mm-hmm.
This is a Dunks. If Dunkin's wants to
Same.
sponsor this podcast, I would
Same.
love that. And then I do 1 cream just to cut it a little bit. But if I look at it and it's any darker than this, I'm saying you take that back.
Oh, really? That's too light for me. I go large
Really?
cold
It's too
brew.
light. Well,
Large
this is
cold-
also, I apologize. I say 1 cream. This might be a little bit lighter because all of the ice has melted.
Fair enough. I
So
go cold.
don't judge me, Judy.
I go cold brew, black, so no dairy, no sugar. But I do get 2 pumps of whatever flavor I want. The normal thing for a large is 4. Sometimes that's too sugary, too much. So I cut it in half. I go 2. And that gives you just enough of the sugary flavor that you would like in your bev.
You know how in I Think You Should Leave, when he drinks the gazpacho and it's room temperature and it burns his mouth?
Yeah.
Whenever I order a coffee and I say 1 cream, no sugar, and I go to the car and I take a sip and there's sugar in it, I have like a violent reaction
Do
of
you
like,
not get any
"Ah!
flavor? You
Ah!"
just go straight cold brew, cold
Yeah,
brew, no flavor? Huh.
yeah. But the
I will say
surprise of the sugar just like throws me off.
I have been championing the Dunkin's cold brew for 5 years now.
Yeah.
Their regular iced coffee sucks. The cold brew is substantially better.
Yeah, you actually got me onto the cold brew. I told you that I get a nice coffee, and then you're like, "What are you, fucking stupid?" And
Yeah,
then you explain to me how cold brew works. I'm like,
yeah,
"That I tried it, and you were right. It
yeah.
cost a
It's
dollar more,
You're right. It
but
is
you
more
were right."
expensive. It is
Yeah.
is it is just but it's like their regular iced coffee is so bitter and gross, whereas their cold brew, you actually could drink it black if you wanted to.
All right, Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. On every other platform, we are Mac ampersand Goo. It's Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
We're on Spotify, and more importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe. 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's watertownsportswear.com. Expert screen printing and embroidery.
Hey, Alexa, tell Mac and Goo fuck. Hey, Alexa, play Mac and Goo on the iHeartRadio app.
Do you think it's I do in my bedroom, listen without headphones or shit like that.
Yeah,
How often do you think people are raw dogging podcasts out in the open where Alexa would hear it?
I would assume every single day. I don't know. I listen to podcasts in my car and then with headphones on, so you're probably
Yeah.
right.
That's predominantly me as well.
Oh, also, if you are on YouTube, once again, we are on YouTube with all of these. If you like to watch people talk, that's really all the YouTube video is. Thank you if you are watching on YouTube, but smash that subscribe button.
Right there.
Give the video a like. If you're already here, if you aren't subscribed, I understand. I don't subscribe to every video thing that I see. I get into
No.
a nice algorithm, which I do enjoy.
Mhm.
But if you're already here, just like the video.
There you go.
And if you want to comment something, like say if you want to comment right now and say that whoever is doing the videos should CGI hair onto Mac. Now is the time to do it.
I also welcome all comments. You can tell me to fuck off. You can tell me I stink. I don't really care. Go for it.
All right. Check us out at the beginning of next week. We'll be doing a news dump. Also, I think both of us might be on Dork for
Oh, yes.
start of the
Yeah, a
top
little
50.
teaser is
Yeah.
Hashtag Dork is going to debut the first half of their top 50 movies of all time list. And I'll tell you, that was a doozy to put
I
together.
hated it. Give me a genre. Give me a time frame.
What was your initial list before you cut it to 50?
I did a pretty good job of I only got it to 67 because I would say to myself, there's no way this is going to crack these 50 movies here already. So I'm not going to keep adding movies to the back end for no reason.
Fair enough. I ended up with 87 movies, which then I cut to 57.
Mhm.
And those last 7 cuts were painstaking. And then honestly, the hardest part though was ordering them 50 to 1 or 1 to 50, however you want to rank it. That took the longest amount of time. And I'm actually pretty happy with my list. I got most of the classics on there that I enjoy. I didn't put them too high though. For example, Citizen Kane was on my list, but I think I had it 40th. It's an influential movie that I really enjoy, but it's not my favorite movie of all time.
I also hate the fact that I forgot a movie. I'm not going to say what the movie is right now, but I had to add it to my list and then push off Young Frankenstein.
Oh, that was your 50th. Yeah, that was in my 87. My 50th was The Graduate.
Oh, I think it's still on my list, but I
Yep.
also love The Graduate too.
Yeah, great one. And some other classics I had on there was Doctor Strangelove. I think I had it 40 as well, a little, just a tad ahead of Citizen Kane. I had Psycho on there. That
Mhm.
might have been the last old movie that I had. I didn't have a ton of old movies, but I had a handful.
Oh, actually, since I had to downsize the Gudio, and right now I'm in a green screen prison.
Hmm.
I have to give you back the Doctor Strangelove poster that used to hang in the Gudio
Okay. All right. I will gladly
because you
accept
have
it.
so much space that you can put it in your
Yeah.
area.
It'll just sit on the floor in my living room.
Because I also feel bad that in the old Gudio, we had 2 amazing framed posters, one of Star Wars, one of Back to the Future, and I have nowhere to put those.
Yeah, they're huge. So in my living room, I have 3 or 4 up, kind of
Yeah.
flanking the television, and it just takes up so much wall space, and I can do that because I don't have a wife trying to interior decorate, but I imagine if I had a significant other living with me, none of those posters would be on the wall.
Everything outside of the Gudio, I have no say in. Actually, I have some say in my son's room because I'm like,
Okay, that's
well,
fair.
it's what a little boy would like, and it's
Yeah,
just true. That's what I would like.
yeah.
Also, my son will walk into the Gudio and just be like, I want that. And I'm like, fuck, it's yours now.
It's hard to say no.
But what am I supposed to be like? No, it's mine.
Yeah. Wrestling back and forth.
Yeah, like, no, that's my turtle.
You're both crying.
All right, Tuesdays are Goose Days. I abuse kangaroos. And speaking of this next word I'm about to say, we'll do Beetlejuice next week. Tim Burton.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.
Now it's time for girls jumping on trampolines.